Hi there, and welcome to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Burr, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. And Roger, episode 20, happy anniversary. We made it to 20. Obviously,
that's a good number.
It's a good number. Just the beginning as well. I think was reading some of the comments. The kids were reading them to me in the car yesterday. It is amazing to see the response we're starting to get. People saying, "Where has this been? How didn't I hear about this? So glad you're doing it." So we are making a difference. One thing we do want to point out before we get started, everyone that listens to the Hub of Junior Golf podcast is eligible to join the Junior Golf Hub. So if interested in that, you could just contact me or Michael Nick at the bottom, and we will make sure that we're able to get you out and hooked up that you can use the Junior Golf Hub for your son or daughter. Roger, another incredible week in the game of golf. We have the new head coach at Penn State University, Mark Leon, coming up in the show. He will be a fascinating interview. FAU, former Florida Gator assistant from Canada, the Canadian national team, all Big Ten as a player, quarterfinal of the U.S. Am as a player at Penn State, and now back at his alma mater. So looking forward to that. But we need to start with the week. It's been a wild one. Our guy, Lucas Glover, the 43-year-old with the broomstick putter, back-to-back victories. He wins. Wyndham needed to win or solo second to make the playoffs, and then he promptly comes out and wins the FedEx St. Jude Championship, the first playoff event. He's now guaranteed of going all the way to the FedEx Finals. But what everyone's talking about, Roger, is as hot as this guy is, he's definitely quickly become on Zach Johnson's radar as the Ryder Cup captain, but he doesn't really fit the prototypical captain's pick of, I don't think a lot of the players that will be on that team know a whole lot about Lucas Glover. I'll put the spotlight right on you, Roger. Is he on the team now if you're Zach Johnson, or if not, what do you have to see this week at Olympia Fields?
Oh, wow. I mean, Ryan, how do you not pick the guy, right? I mean, he's just won twice. I mean, even in the playoff, you got to give him kudos to taking Patrick Cantlay in the playoff. I mean, at the end of the day, this broomstick putter that's working for him, it's going to be, it is his savior. His career was pretty much washed up, I think, without it. I think that momentum is going to carry a lot of weight with Zach Johnson. He is hot. He's got confidence. So I think Zach has got to look at him seriously as a captain's pick. Who else are you going to pick? I mean, just JT hasn't, is he even playing golf anymore? I don't know. I haven't seen his name. They haven't talked about him. So
right now with Justin Thomas, you're getting the undeniable captain of that team. You're getting a Hall of Famer. You're getting a guy that lives and dies for team competition. You're getting a guy that will be the leader in that room, or you're getting a 43-year-old that might need to wear a name tag to introduce himself because his name in the Ryder Cup, I promise you this, Roger, his name in the Ryder Cup has never been mentioned before. He is red hot. The story of his career, as fragile a putter as arguably the tour's ever seen. I agree with you, Zach is looking at him. Let's just say for argument's sake, right now he's down to, Ricky Fowler needs a captain's pick. Cam Young needs a captain's pick. Colin Morikawa, Sam Burns. They can't take them all. Even if he took JT over Lucas, he'd have to take JT over Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler's had a heck of a season. He'd have to take JT over Sam Burns. So to bring Lucas Glover in, I think that would probably end JT's chances. But what would you want to see from Glover at Olympia Fields? Only 50 players in the field, so he's getting all 4 rounds. Is there a number you have in mind where he's on the team if he does it this week?
Well, I think the odds, to your point, are so against him. If he's not in the top 5, I mean, I don't want to put that kind of pressure on a guy like that. But you know what? At the top 5, to your point, you've got so many guys who are going to be captain's picks this year that fit the team, especially in their character, in their cloth, as far as their age. To your point, he's definitely wearing a name tag to most of those guys, or for most of those guys. He's had no experiences whatsoever. So, and again, you're riding this hot streak. What happens? As as red hot as you can be just as cold, right? I mean, he can be blue cold, and by the time Ryder Cup rolls around, especially putting that kind of pressure on him as far as like, hey, we picked you, we expect you to do these great things. Yeah, I'd hate to see some serious meltdown out there, like you said. I mean, here's this first 2-footer on the first hole and he whiffs, right? I mean, what you're talking about, he's done after that.
Yeah, career ender even. It'll be fascinating. Good for Lucas Glover. Like you said, the career after Memorial, he was outside the top 180 in FedEx Cup standings. I mean, essentially, he was at the rock bottom. In his last 6 events, he has 5 top 5s and 2 wins. He is clearing away the hottest player in the world. If he does it again at Olympia Fields, what really screwed Zach Johnson was Mark Harmon was not getting any love for the Ryder Cup. Not Mark Harmon.
Brian Harmon.
Brian Harmon. Mark Harmon is an actor. Brian
it's okay,
Harmon,
you're getting old, Ryan. I understand.
Brian Harmon wins the Open, immediately goes into automatic qualifier. Brooks Koepka no one was thinking anyone from Liv. Koepka wins the PGA, finishes second at the Masters. He's in on points. So, I think coming out of the Masters, when Zach Johnson had his whiteboard, I don't think he had Brooks Koepka necessarily, or definitely did not have Brian Harmon on his list. And now he's been thrown another curveball with Lucas Glover. So will be fascinating to see ultimately what he does in the next month here.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back and say Lucas Glover has been one of the hottest players recently for the male side, but we got to also think about, hey, who just won in Britain? Vivian Liu. Yeah. I mean, what has she won? Her
number one in the world
years, three times. I mean, come on, this girl's playing some golf.
Yeah, I mean, and not getting a whole lot of love. I mean, I read some of the critics that are really down on. Everyone wants Rose Zhang to be that person, and it's not Rose Zhang. Her name's Vivian, and she is that person.
She is that person. I mean, she's been crushing it. I mean, and smiling all the way. I mean, I think to your point, I mean, I know she probably was feeling that whole thing too with Rose Zhang coming out this year and going, oh, what happened to Vu? I mean, she's already won twice. I mean, come on. Now a third time. What a great story that is.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, golf in a pretty good spot. Just 2 events left here in the FedEx Cup. That's going to be wild to see, and then, which I know you'll have your eye on, the new FedEx Fall, where every player from 71 to 125 will go and play these Falls event for their PGA Tour existence, and they're privileged to play in 2024. It's not Q School, but I'll tell you, that Fall is going to get a charge.
No doubt. I mean, look at how many guys just got through last year. I mean, that was a special. What is it? Started last year when they did that, and now you had so many guys who were in that 71 to 100 and play their way in, like an Aaron Baddeley and Ryan Armour, and there's a couple of guys last year that just really made a great impact in that fall FedEx season, if you will. Short season.
Yeah, absolutely. So going to be really interesting to see the drama that unfolds as players aren't playing for necessarily to be a $100 million in the bank. They're playing for their PGA Tour existence. So that will be fun. Yeah. Welcome in our aforementioned guest, the newly titled head coach at Penn State University, a former all Big Ten performer there. Back where it all started, we say hello to head coach Mark Leon. Coach, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Guys. I'm excited to be on this.
All right, we've got a million questions for you, so we're just going to start banging away here, Coach.
All right.
It's been a really interesting career for you as a coach, but I want to go back to you as a player. You chose Penn State, coming from the Canadian national team. Obviously made it to the quarterfinals of the USAM, a fantastic player. Take me back to the decision for you to go to Penn State. What ultimately made you sign that dotted line?
Oh, well, well, first off, there was no Canadian national team when I was a junior, and I think that's a big thing that's changed back home in Canada now. Is kind of the level of support and education for these kids. But growing up, we just kind of tried to follow the guys older than us. Guys like Derek Gillespie, John Mills, who's now the coach at Kent State, Reg Millage. You just kind of looked at what the best older players were doing. And at the time, a lot of them, they came down to the U.S. and they played in the AJGA. So you played all the best stuff back home. But ultimately, my decision to come to Penn State was I probably in my last 2 years of high school played about 7 or 8 AJGA tournaments. I was fortunate to do pretty well in a number of those. And it's kind of weird. I'm actually up here recruiting right now in Detroit. And that's how I ended up at Penn State. I was playing an event. It was the week after my high school prom. I was a little bit of a moron at 18, and I didn't even want to play the tournament. I wanted to go to a lake house with all my buddies. And my dad told me, you're playing in this tournament. You've committed to it. You're not pulling back on your commitment. So went down to Detroit, and the Penn State assistant was there. And I played terrible while he was watching. I think I double bogeyed the first hole. It was a par 5, easy par 5, and bogeyed another hole. And so he basically left. I think he saw me go 3 over through 4. I opened with a bad round, and then I backdoored a top 5. And he went to the head coach, Coach Nye, and just said, this guy, if he can start like that and hang in there and play an event like that, this is a guy you need to have on your team. So that was it. It was Coach Disselrath watching those 4 holes. And then, back in the day, everything was the official visits. It wasn't kind of the landscape the way that it is now. Everybody kind of got recruited in their senior year, and I took visits to 5 great schools, but Penn State was the one that kind of had my heart. And very, very late. I was in my 5th year of high school. We used to have 5 years of high school in Canada. February of my final year of high school, I committed to go to Penn State the following fall. So that's kind of how the process went. And I played on Team Canada. They started up Team Canada. Stephen Ross, the former director of Golf Canada, it was a project. I think they had a bunch of money from the sale of Glen Abbey, and they decided to kind of try and push professional golf forward in Canada by supporting people more at the grassroots level. And I was really fortunate to play on that the year that I graduated from Penn State.
Well, that's a wonderful story, and obviously it worked out extremely well.
Yeah.
I do have to give you your props. We had your former boss, Coach Deacon, on here right after they won SECs, before they won the national championship. And Coach, obviously, you were a huge part of this national championship team. You were instrumental in bringing those guys to Gainesville. I know you weren't on the ground or part of the team per se. You had other responsibilities that we'll get to, but to see that come all the way to fruition, how much gratification did you get from that?
Oh man, I was screaming at the TV while the matches were going on, and I was crying when it finished. I mean, it is a weird thing, with coaching. Like I'm obviously back in the place that means the most to me, but when you change jobs and you take a new job, like these are your kids, and you've invested so much into them. And I mean, to see that team, that makeup, with the 4 seniors, I'd spent 2 years with I spent 1 year with Yushi because he transferred in, but I spent 2 years with the other 3 of them. And then I was bummed out. Matt Kress is a special kid, and the fact that he made the lineup was just not surprising, but just he's got an incredible story. So, but ultimately, like it's the kids, but it's also JC. Like that's and Dudley. Like Dudley becomes such an incredible friend, but to know what JC's put into it every single day. From the moment I stepped on campus in Gainesville, to see what that program means to him, and the amount of effort and professionalism he puts forth into the job and conducts himself with each day. I mean, it was. I was just so overjoyed for those guys to finish out the year that way. And I told people, like, the University of Florida is a special place, but it's a unique place. Like, it's one of the only athletic departments where if you go down through every single sport, that's like the expectation is to compete at that level. It's not just like, hey, we hope that we're going to win championships. If you're not, there's some dude across the hallway that is. Like, you look at track, you look at gymnastics, you look at baseball, softball. Like, every spring, it's a murderer's row athletic department where people are consistently winning SEC and oftentimes national championships. So there's a pressure and a responsibility that comes with working at that place. And, I think, and you don't always have the opportunities, right? Like, to have a team that's so stacked and loaded with 4 seniors like that, you got to make it count when you have the chance. And they did. And, God, I mean, what a moment for those guys. And they pulled it off in pretty dramatic fashion. So, yeah, I was probably apart from all the people in Gainesville, I was probably the number one cheerleader down there in Palm Beach at the time, screaming away.
Mark, that's great, and it's great that you get to share with that as well. And again, congratulations to your new appointment here in Penn State, the Big Ten. You're talking about expectation. You've got a lot of expectation. You're going to the Big Ten conference now, and you're at Penn State. You got football season right around the corner. You're talking about tradition of winning. I know you're excited about bringing that back to Penn State program that is a good program, obviously, but I know you want to make it better. So talking about junior golfers, what are you looking for in junior when you're recruiting? What are you looking for in your junior golfer coming to Big Ten, Penn State?
That's a great question. And I would preface that by saying, as obviously I know Penn State. I mean, I played at Penn State and I was the assistant coach at Penn State for 6 years. So part of what I always tried to do was find the guys that were the right fit at Penn State. And those were not necessarily similar to the guys that were the right fit at Florida. And the guys at Florida were not necessarily similar to the guys that were the right fit when I coached at Florida Atlantic. Like, I think you always, as a coach, in my opinion, you need to start with the place that you're at and then go from there. You can't just come in and say, like, well, I like this type of guy, and then you're coaching at Penn State or Northwestern or Michigan, and maybe it's like that kind of guy doesn't necessarily work here. So at Penn State, I think what makes it special is we have this incredible college town of State College. You have, similar to Florida, like, you have this incredible athletic environment within the campus. You have all these people that are going to play in, the Olympics one day, or, obviously in the NFL. And my wife, I mean, she had 3 girls that were on her soccer team that played in the Women's World Cup and played in the Olympics for various countries. She was a soccer player at Penn State. So I'm looking for kids that want a comprehensive experience. Like, yes, they've got to be incredible golfers to play in the Big Ten, but they want to come to a big school. They want a social atmosphere. They want elite academics. They want to feel part of something bigger. That is number one. And then number two, when it comes to their physical golf game, it's different playing golf in mid-October in the Big Ten. It just is. You can't just look at a kid's scores. A kid could go out in July AJGA and rack up a bunch of top 10s, but if they don't have an adequate ball speed, the Big Ten is the hardest conference in the country. It's the hardest Power 5 conference to play golf in from a condition standpoint. I'll never forget my first year coaching. I watched a great player play the Ohio State Scarlet course in July. And, he went on, he played in U.S. Opens. He was a great player, ultimately for the Buckeyes. But, he was a dinker. And he's out there on the second hole ripping in 6-iron. And then I remember playing the Kepler later that year. And I've got this kid on my team who's like 6'3", just murder balls driver, and he's hitting in 3-iron. So you have to understand that is this kid's game going to be able to project to rainy conditions and 50 degrees on a 7,300-yard golf course? I'm not looking necessarily just for big power hitters, but the guy he's got to be able to compress it and play kind of big boy golf courses at that next level.
That's a great point. I'm sorry about that, Ryan. I was just going to jump in, and you're probably going to do the same. But Mark, one of the things we talk a lot about is when we deal with a lot of juniors at the Golf Performance Center and talk about developing skills and developing things that just like you said, the ball speeds and things they need to do versus just scoring. And I think that's one of the things I'm very curious about. And I think that's what you're saying is you're looking for players who have skills who then can turn that into scores on any type of condition versus just when it's perfect.
100%. And I'll name drop somebody. This is a super random. You just recruit all these years. Like I've been doing this for 11 years now, and there's just certain experiences that stick with you over the years. But I remember actually it was at that same AJGA at Ohio State. There was a kid that ended up being a really nice player for Iowa. His name was Nate Yankovic, and he was kind of one of the last groups of guys, hadn't been recruited yet, and he just looks the part. And you looked at his scores, and maybe the scores weren't that great, but you're watching the kid hit balls in the range, you're watching him navigate the Scarlet course, and you're like, damn, this guy looks like a really good player. Like, I wonder why he hasn't, why he's not winning these tournaments. Like, and then Iowa took him, and they did phenomenal work with the kid. He ended up being an all Big Ten performer, I think, by his junior or senior year. But yeah, like you kind of, and that was JD Dornitz would be my best story of that at Penn State. He was, he was a baseball player, and he wasn't very good in 9th or 10th grade. And I went out and watched him play at a tournament at Huntington Valley, big golf course in Philadelphia. And he just looked the part. I mean, he looked like a guy that you could stand on the range at a gorgeous golf swing, and he's just throttling drivers with a 300-yard carry and a tight little draw. And he had the worst resume of the 3 guys that we recruited in the class, but he ended up being one of the best players to ever play for Penn State. And you realize he had the skill set. He just was late to the game. And that's another thing I think is kind of uniquely Northern or Big Ten. Like in Florida, I was completely unprepared when I went there for how much golf these kids play at such a young age and how good they can get at an accelerated rate. And part of that's the FSCA and the FJT tour that they run. But then up north is different. Like just because down south, you don't get as many of these late bloomer kids, but up north you get kids that maybe they're a football player, a baseball player, a hockey player is the big one in Canada, and they just kind of get midway through high school and I don't feel like doing this anymore. I think I want to do golf. And you have so many stories of guys that become elite college players. Taylor Pendrick at Kent State being the best one, where but JD was our case, where it was just like they kind of fall in love with golf later. So yeah, I'm not a guy that goes right off the numbers. I need to see a kid play. Like I need to see how they do it. It's just as important as what they do as far as the numbers they're producing at 16. But the other cool thing now with the way instruction's gone, like just because a kid doesn't hammer it at 16, instructors have gotten so much better with learning how to teach people to swing faster. I mean, I wasn't a long hitter, so I wish I had kind of grown up in this era where I could have gone to an instructor and they could have put me on, like a speed program in conjunction with a good strength and conditioning program. And maybe I could have changed an aspect of my game the way Matthew Fitzpatrick has. I have never been the type of player Matthew Fitzpatrick is, but It's kind of cool that just because you have a 160 ball speed, it's not like a death sentence to be a dinker forever. You know, you can get faster.
Yeah, and we the Performance Development Index, which we've taken to Stanford with Conrad Ray, Coach Fields at Texas. It is a new system that goes beyond the score and does kind of give you maybe a kid isn't hitting it like that now, but when you look at them jump and you look at them run and do some of the other things, you know that it's going to translate to speed if they put the time into it. I want to ask you this, Coach. At the University of Florida and even at FAU, you could ride your bike to an FJT event and find 5 kids that could shoot 65. I always think about, Florida's roster was set. I believe the story is a kid after the first semester decided to turn pro, and coach has a spot, and John Dubois, who was going to a D2 school, decides that he wins state in November at Mission Inn, and it doesn't cost anyone in Florida to go to college. So Dubois gets a spot with the Gators, and I don't know if anyone really thought he would ever play, but not only has he played, he's played a ton and has been a huge part of that team. My point, at FAU in Florida, you really didn't have to go looking because the state is so stacked with players. I'm sure there are some in-state college that can play, but you are going to have to travel a little bit. Now, Mike Small in Illinois, we know, Coach, he is the class of the Big Ten. He is proof that you can win a national championship and it be minus 20 degrees in February. So we know it can be done. I'm sure you tell yourself that when you took the job. It can be done. You can win a national championship. I'm not coming to Penn State to try to compete in the Big Ten. I'm coming here to win a championship. I know it can be done. So how do you find your players? How do you know when you go to Detroit or you go to wherever, how do you decide what junior players you even want to take a look at before you get there?
Great question. First thing about the bad weather, our AD Mike Spiegler our assistant AD Mike Spiegler at Florida, whenever we do well in the fall, he would have a thing, and he's like, we don't hand out rings in October. You don't hand out rings in January, February either. So I think the first, and Mike Small's done the best job of this of anyone, but you have to figure out how to leverage, what would be seen as your disadvantage and make it your advantage. So yes, the weather sucked in the Big Ten in January, February, but that gives you, we get back 4 months on the rest of the Southern guys to develop skills without the guys worrying about posting a score. You hear the PGA Tour guys, that's a big part of the LIV. A big part of the LIV controversy was that they felt like they didn't have an off season. So we get an off season. What Mike Small has found the way to do, and we're all of us are trying to figure out our own way to do that. I'm excited to do it at Penn State, is make that off season count. What can you do better than the other team? That's kind of part one. And now that I've worked at Florida, that's like my greatest advantage working in the Big Ten. I think I might be the only coach or one of the only coaches that's worked for one of the kind of Southern blue blood programs. And that's kind of step one for me, is figuring out how to use that experience to improve what we do at Penn State. As far as the kids, I don't care if they're coming from England, Belgium, South Africa, Canada, or Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. They've got to fit kind of the character profile of what I'm looking for. And that's kind of what I was talking about. It's about what does the kid want first and foremost. Without giving away all of my secrets for Penn State.
That's what we're looking for, Coach. That's what the audience is looking for.
I feel like historically we've had the biggest recruiting advantage in the Big Ten from an American standpoint. I think that if you look at the state of New York, there's always great golfers coming from New York. And there is no big state school competing in Power 5. Like Syracuse has had this great basketball program. They don't have a golf team. So we've always had, like, you know, I'm in Michigan right now, and I'm driving this road between Ann Arbor and Lansing to go watch this event. And it's like, man, you've got one state and two incredible schools that are fighting for all the kids. You know, Illinois, I mean, Northwestern's different because they're, you know, higher academic, but you know, Iowa, there's kids from Illinois that can go to school really cheap in Iowa. So like a lot of these Big Ten schools are kind of fighting for the same kids, whereas we've always kind of gone Pennsylvania, New York, and New Jersey. Now, things have gotten different since Rutgers joined the party. They've joined the Big Ten party, and my old college roommate, Rob Schute's done a great job there. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you always want to try and build a team inside out. And that's what we did at Florida. You know, like you said, there's great players in Florida. Obviously, they won a national championship with Brazil, two kids from California, and China. So, you know, you also try to find good players wherever you can find them. But for Penn State, we start inside out. And then obviously I'm Canadian, so I have good relationships with coaches up there. So I know the tournaments, I know the people to talk to that can give me good information on if kids are, you know, they have the right type of game and they'd be the right type of fit. But that's kind of where you start. And then from there, I mean, and it's this way with every place. Like Charles Hunsinger is one of the best players that ever played for Penn State. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. There's some family connection. Like Penn State, we have the world's largest alumni association. A big selling feature in the recruiting process. So, you know, that's kind of what we say. We're like a cult and we're everywhere. You know, you walk through an airport, somebody's going to scream "We are" at you. So, I think that's the thing is I know where to start looking for kids, but then, you know, you're always surprised by the kids that reach out to you, or you hear through somebody that this kid's got a Penn State connection. Yeah, but it's still always just finding the best players who are the best fit for the place.
Mark, that's a great thing to say there. You know, for our audience, with the parents and the kids who are listening, for them to understand how important the fit is on their side of it as well. I think you said something earlier regarding, you know, you being in Florida and the players that you guys have in Florida versus, you know, Mike Smalley having players in Illinois or you having players in Penn State. There are different players and there's horses for courses, right? I mean, that's really kind of, I think, a big part of this for the journey of these young athletes looking at and trying to make the right decisions for themselves as well, is understanding that. So I think that's really important that you highlight that as part of what you do as a coach. I think it's really, really important for the audience to hear that, because sometimes, you know, you want to go somewhere where it's just not a good fit environmentally, if you will, for their success or the team's success. So I appreciate you sharing that. But we do want all your secrets. I mean, at the end of the day, we want all the secrets so that we can help these kids.
Well, if I could give one secret to the kids out there, the one question that doesn't get asked enough in the recruiting process is, like, you'd be surprised. They all want to know, oh, you know, what are your facilities like? Well, the number one question to me is, give me your scores. Like, show me your qualifying scores. I want to see what is the path to the lineup, and a coach should be able to provide that. Like, you know, if a coach isn't providing that, then that's going to tell you that it's going to be a murky path to you qualifying for the team. But also, what does a week look like? Do we practice in the morning? Do we practice in the afternoon? Am I going to have freedom to do some things on my own? Or are you going to be telling me everything that I'm going to be doing over the course of the week? All of those things, that it's weird. You'd think it would be like one of the first questions that a kid would want to know. And it just doesn't come up that much.
Great point.
So I mean, and ultimately with us on a recruiting trip, you're trying to show the school to a kid, but ultimately you're trying to answer their questions. You're trying to be there and meet the families where they are. So perfect example, like Joey Marino, who's an awesome coach, national champion this year at Nova Southeastern. We went down there and they play Grand Oaks where Caddyshack was filmed. So we go out there. I have an entire team full of international kids. None of them have even seen Caddyshack, which still it's like enraging, right? And I'm going out there and I'm in heaven. Like this is Danny Noonan. Like this is D'Annunzio. It's Smale. Like this is bigger than Augusta National for me. And he's talking to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's where D'Annunzio is smoking the dart in the woods, looping, and that's where Danny won the caddy tournament." And he goes, "Mark, I used to give this tour to all my recruits, and 4 or 5 years ago, so many of them had never seen the movie, so I just stopped doing it." And oh God, that's tragic. But I think that's kind of it. Like, I'm not going to go rambling on a visit about stuff if it's not important. It's like my kids at FAU, they're all international. They didn't care about football. Like, oh, we have this awesome stadium and we're making improvement to facility. They don't care. Most of them didn't see a single football game. They just want to play golf. Like, they're over here to try and make the DP World Tour. So that's what we focused on. And that's, where I tried to meet them. But yeah, like as the kids need to, be specific and understand what you're getting yourself into. Don't just look at maybe the brand of the school or that type of thing. Really try to figure out what is my life going to be like once I'm here.
Well, Coach, I've taken you over, so I apologize for that, but I got to hit.
No, that's all good.
Okay. We're not going to have time to get into your new big rivals in the Big Ten like UCLA, USC, and Oregon, but I will get into, because I know this is the number one question we get from thousands of parents now, which is if my son or daughter goes to this school, how do I know that they're not going to bring in now 3 transfers after I sign? And I know there's no right answer to it, Coach. It's now part of your world. The toothpaste is out of the tube for the NCAA. I wish there was something that could be done, but as we sit here today, nothing is being done. There are schools, certainly some schools that we're all very aware of are now they have pretty much abandoned the junior golf game, and they are filling their roster, just taking transfers, because that's the world we live in now. Are you going to do both? Are you more interested in bringing a junior player and building that culture, or where are you at with the portal?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, that's a really complicated question. But I had no money this summer to recruit transfers, so it was a moot point. My experience with the portal working at Florida it couldn't have been more different than my experience at FAU. I think if you look at this, well, Florida, any kid that goes on the transfer portal, that is like a elite caliber, right? Like your Yu Shin Lin, right? The example I can use because I recruited Yu Shin off the portal.
From USC.
Shin Lin, from USC, yeah. So, he had played 1 year at USC. He had been great. He was about to play. He was playing in the Masters. He'd already played in 1 Masters. So the guy played in 2 Masters, and we got him. But a kid like that, if you're the coach at Florida and you reach out, the kid's going to listen. Any elite kid is interested in the University of Florida, right? And you get to FAU, and I thought, our campus is a mile and a half from the beach. I'll be able to pick up somebody off the portal. And there were a couple kids, they just, that's not what they were looking for. So then you get into this scenario where what I was actually doing before I left FAU was I had abandoned the portal really to go after junior golfers, because I felt like that was actually going to be a better fit. At Penn State, I showed up and there's no money to recruit anybody off the portal, so I hadn't really been able to look into it. But if you look at the matriculation rates of kids going into the portal, and it's the worst reported on thing in all of college golf right now. It's a joke. It's like 20-30% of the kids that go on are actually finding a new place to play. So the kids are kind of being sold this lie, like, oh, and that's the thing, is that you get these kids, they'll jump on the portal, they'll fire you an email, and it's just like, dude, I don't want you. Like, you know, I don't know what you thought this was going to be. And I'll make a point of telling those kids, man, you were in a really great place. You know, you were at an awesome school and you had an amazing coach and great teammates. Why do you want to leave? So there's, you know, as is most things with society, right? Like it's these guys at the top are driving a narrative that doesn't effectively filter down to the rest of the kids. So like Yushin Lin is not representative
right
of the, like, the dude played in the Masters twice and then got on the transfer portal. Yeah, guess what? Everybody's gonna pick up the phone. He's a freak. Like you watch him hit one golf ball and you just shake your head. It's like this is a joke, like how good this guy is.
Roger,
but a lot of these kids, like,
Roger and I've had this discussion before that, you know, they think they're doing these kids a favor that you could just keep transferring and going to the portal. And Roger and I've even discussed Florida, which, as we know, is this massive hotbed. The 2022 graduating class, last JGS Florida top 10. That is the Lou Clanton year, obviously great year at Florida State. Andrew McLaughlin playing great at Wake Forest. Of the top 10, 6 were in the portal after their freshman year because they didn't play right away. Newsflash: college golf is really hard. And now these kids are looking for homes, and they were in a great home, and it's a mess.
Yeah, but you know, the responsibility also works both ways, right? Like, you talk about John Dubois. What made John so special? Like, he had the skills, but not the scores. That was it. And that's, I could do a whole podcast on how much I love that kid and how we recruited him and how that all played out. But John dug his heels in. Like, John was best friends with Ricky Castillo, and Ricky just beat him like a drum for 2 years until finally John was just like, I'm tired of getting chirped by this guy. But that's why John got so good. Like, it took him longer to become an elite player, but he hung in there and he fought and he dug in and it's worked out really great for him. You know, kids that are worried, like, if you want to actually be good in this game, that whole mentality, like, well, what if I go and the coach brings in 3 transfers? Kick their butt, like, you know, mow them down. Like, if you've got the best players that I've coached, like, do you think Ricky cared that when we added Yushin to the team? Like, do you think he was worried? No. Right. It's like
he just wanted to get better.
And try to destroy him. So, like, in qualifying, our qualifiers, you know, one of my old players, Gordon Neal, he was my first week on the job. He goes, our qualifiers should be Wagner rated here. And he was right. Like, Alejandro Tosti, who just won 2 days ago, my first qualifier, he lost to a freshman, and he shot 20 under par. And Chris Nito shot 23 under par and beat him. So, like, I don't know. The transfer thing, coaches are just trying to keep their jobs, ultimately. The portal is, you know, it's indicative of kind of a greater problem in just in I guess society as a whole, and just these lessons of, you make a commitment, or are you going to stick out that commitment? I know that it works both ways, where, you know, you have coaches, you know, jumping around and it's hypocritical, or presidents now and ADs, you know, jumping around conferences. So it's not like, it's a symptom of something that's more widespread. in all of college athletics. But it's not like, not every team out there can just build a franchise through the portal year in and year out. Some teams that they've taken guys and 1 year they're great, and then the next year they get a guy off the portal and he's supposed to be the second coming, and then he doesn't even make their lineup. So it's ultimately, I still am a big believer in trying to bring in families, trying to put kids in, through college and help, develop their skills as people. JC had an awesome, I remember we talked about it the one time. He said something that stuck with me. He said, I'm a big believer in winning, because, when you wake up every day and you try to chase something special, the skills you develop along the way as a kid are going to benefit you for the rest of your life. So, they kind of all goes hand in hand. And it's true. My AD, that was his big question on my Pat Trapp on my interview. He's like, so what the hell's the deal with Illinois? Like, how are we going to catch them? I'm like, yeah, it's tough. And Mike didn't do it overnight. I think it took Mike 8 years to win his first Big Ten title. So that tells you right there, even this program that's the juggernaut in my conference that we're all trying to chase down Mike Small and the guys in orange, Rome was not built in a day. It took him 8 years to win his first Big Ten. And now it seems like he wins every year. But I think that's operating with that understanding that, you have to work for things in life. You kind of have to have a plan, and you have to understand that it's not linear. Like, it's not just a straight line to success. There's ups and there's downs, and that's I've got to dig into your stat from Florida, because I would have recruited every single one of those kids, right? So I'm going to take a look at that when I get back to the office, because that is wild.
Yeah, it's like you said, maybe it will. The word will get out. Certainly, interviews like this help explain the process, that the grass isn't always greener. Coach, I will tell our audience that you may be the number one coach in America when it comes to social media. You're an absolute must follow. Had you chosen a career in broadcasting, you might have ended up on the Masters. You're pretty good at it.
Thank you. Yeah, I find myself
probably
terrified of me at Penn State now.
Yeah, I found myself watching qualifying at FAU on Instagram. I didn't even know any of the kids. I mean, it was entertaining. So
why we started doing that at Florida was because of COVID. It was we came back. We didn't know if there was going to be tournaments. And then it's like so many people have told me what you just said. Like, oh man, keep doing the videos. But it was just a way to keep people entertained. And the other thing too was it was to put our kids on the spot. It's that they would joke about it. They would call it the my kid Juan Delgado, the Instagram pressure. He was like he would make fun of his teammates. Oh, you're crumbling under the Instagram pressure. And it's you play qualifying and it's very anonymous, right? It states you're at home and nobody knows and nobody sees. And then when the scores go up on Golf Stat, the whole world gets to see. So, when you're suiting it up for the Nittany Lions or the Owls or the Gators. So it was a way to both entertain, but also create a pressure environment, because we didn't know when we were going to play our next tournament during COVID. And how can we keep the guys under some pressure and keep them ready? That's why I started doing it. And then it kind of morphed into a fun thing and a way to connect. But, yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Coach, you've been an amazing interview. Your past certainly is an inspiration. I'm sure families that didn't have Penn State on their list are going to be reaching out. You did a heck of a recruiting pitch today. I'd come play for you, but we appreciate you
thanks.
on the Hub and Junior Golf podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, great stuff. Good luck.
Thanks so much.
With the Lions.
Okay.
And
have a good one.
You too.
You too.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Ryan, how good was that right there? Is knowing that the culture that you're developing is developing the whole person, and skills versus just score. There's building blocks, right? I mean, it couldn't be any better, for a lot of things that we talk about.
And not to toot our own horn, Roger, but without the Hub of Junior Golf podcast, seriously, these stories and these personalities no one in Alabama would ever hear about the coach at Penn State, or hear him talk, or hear his recruiting pitch, or what he's about, and on and on and on. And, we're at episode 20, as we get to 120 and have, pretty much every coach on eventually, it really is going to be a place as kids start to think about where they want to go to school, they're going to be able to listen to that coach and hear his philosophy and how he's doing it. We've had coaches, Roger, on here that have said that the portal is the future, and it's a huge part of what they do. So, and it should be. I mean, there's, at the end of the day, the job of a college coach is to grow men and women, but it's also for them to win, so they keep their job. So everyone's going to have their own philosophy.
No doubt about it. I mean, they have to win, right? At the end of the day, there's every athletic conference out there is, as you can see, as you alluded to earlier, conferences or teams are changing conferences for money, for fame, for victories, for prestige, all of those things that are happening, and every coach feels it. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, I think it was great that he mentioned that and how he's looking at the portal. And, yeah, there are, again, horses for courses and horses for teams, if you will, that the team or the player has to fit the culture. And that's what he's looking for as much as anything else.
And how about this? And this falls, this is, we always come back to the Hub and the tool that it is to get the most information possible. If you end up going to some people do make mistakes, whether it's academically or golf, or it's just not the right fit. But certainly if you use the Junior Golf Hub, you do find it is a tool that does give you a great way to match where your son or daughter is with schools that are out there. So, for every 1,000 kids, Roger, that go in the portal, only 200 find a spot. 800, their collegiate golf careers come to an end. That's a good thing.
It's not. I don't think that's a good thing, Ryan. But I mean, it's incredible, though. I mean, they've been, as Mark just said, or as Coach just said, that they have been kind of fed this or sold this bill of goods of, hey, you've got this opportunity out there, go for it. And there's a repercussion for that, right? If I go in the portal, don't get picked up, how does that relationship now rebuild at where you are, or does it sour? That makes it even tougher for you to play there, right? I also love what he said regarding the fact that, anchor in, build your skills, just compete against those guys that are there. It's going to make you better. And I think we've talked about this several times. How many players that go on and play Division I golf have this the dream of playing at the next level. Wherever you are, be the best you can be where you are, right? So if you can go and compete, no matter what program you're in, that's going to allow you to beat and play the best players every day, day in and day out, you're going to be better. Kind of the Tom Brady syndrome, if you will, where, hey, I'm okay if I'm not the starting quarterback. I know that I'm getting better. I know that my skills are getting better and becoming just a solid rock of an athlete.
And Roger, how about Coach Leon, without even knowing it, essentially describing PDI as what he ultimately tries to look for in a kid? Like, if you at home don't think this is going to become as important as the rankings, it is. And how important and how big of an advantage is it that you could start your PDI training now? Because especially if your son or daughter is 11, 12, by the time they are being recruited, every coach is going to know their PDI index and know their number and whatnot. That's exactly what you had to have a little smile on your face, because he was basically giving you affirmation that everything you've developed, Roger, is what the coaches want.
Oh, absolutely, Ryan. I'm definitely giddy about it. I wanted to jump in so badly and say, oh my God, hey, we've got what you're looking for here too. Can't wait to help you. Matter of fact, one of his players, James Allen, is he knows it quite well. I mean, that's how he got recruited actually at Penn State. So, yeah, I mean, I think hopefully the audience is hearing that, because it is, as he said, more and more athletes are coming to the game a little bit later. They're not growing up. And very rarely does someone who grows up from the ages of 7, 8, 9 end up being that top recruit at 17, 18, 19, right? Because they're either burnout or they just have already, they've got scores down, but they don't have skills developed enough to go to these next level places that's going to require them to play in snow or ice or wind conditions, because their skills are just not quite as solid as they need to be.
Yeah. So start your PDI now. Once again, go to the Junior Golf Hub and get your son or daughter on a program now. I can't tell you how important that is for when the age of recruiting comes. It is important that you understand PDI and start to use it as your training, in addition to trying to go out and shoot scores. Roger, we went way over today, but I think it was well worth it. Certainly thank you to Coach Leon. Thank you to Michael Nick, our producer and director, once again being able to pull this off for 20 weeks. And we're just getting started, Roger. We've hit a chord. We've hit a spot in this huge community, and people are responding with what we're doing. We're
going to keep going, Ryan. Thanks so much. I mean, thank you for your dedication in getting this thing, being the voice and the mouthpiece, if you will.
It's great to talk to these coaches and players. We have amateur players that are lined up to come that are actually playing the USM today. But look forward to the next 20. For Roger Nick, for Michael Nick, I'm Ryan Burr saying until next time on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. So long, everybody.